Good morning, and welcome to A Better World with Julann and Fran. I'm Julann.
And I'm Fran, and our guest today is Bianca Hellenga. Welcome, Bianca.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And can you talk a little bit about what it is that you're doing or have done to make the world a better place?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Basically, my approach to making the world a better place is, or has been, kind of deconstructing my life, and seeing in many ways where uh, uh, myself, and I also see that with my clients now, they're the way that we show up in the world in an attempt to feel worthy, and how and why we are seeking it outside of ourselves, and kind of deconstructing these ideas and beliefs around why we're seeking to reclaim our worth through external measurements, and shifting that. So basically my own journey started out, well, I moved from Europe to the Netherlands, from the Netherlands over to the US to try and somewhat escape my own baggage, which didn't work. But it was a way to try and seek myself and spread my wings. But I have later learned that I was trying to seek my worth in everything outside of myself, through relationships, through uh, people pleasing and self abandonment, particularly. And I have come to see now in hindsight that it's not just my story, it's the story of many people. But through deconstructing how it has been occurrent in my life, and how it was even occurrent with my mother and my grandmother and my great grandmother, and then particularly because I'm a woman, I see it from a woman's perspective, how a lot of it has been causing us to deny ourselves in many, many aspects and show up for other people without filling our own cups. So my journey from moving overseas, I mean, I was young, I was immature, I was trying to find myself in all the wrong places, but everything had been um, meaningful in that way, until I had an experience with an ex-boyfriend that sort of um, separated the experience of me trying to find worth through remaining in an abusive relationship, particularly, which led to an NDE, in
And a near-death experience?
correct.
Oh,
And that was, I was only 24, 23, 24 at the time. But the relationship itself, like I got into that relationship at the time because I didn't want to feel alone, and I was feeling sorry in some ways for this person, but at the same time I was trying to fill my own void. But the things that were happening in that relationship were, I can see now in hindsight, were not okay. I was being treated disrespectfully. I wasn't. Um, it was abusive. So in many ways, and I allowed it to happen. I didn't get out. I was scared. Didn't know where else to go. And at the same time, some part of me identified with that relationship because I saw my worth through it. Because I was in some way showing up for this person, helping them while denying my own self, and to the point where it was just not okay. But I couldn't see that until some things happened, including that NDE, um, which was not, it wasn't particularly heaven like, the experience of what I saw, but it did shatter a perception of myself, which it took me 18 years to kind of come to that conclusion, how all of these things did shift and the things that happened afterward. But it was like a void. Like I was consciously aware of being somewhere that didn't have walls, it didn't have a ceiling. I was suspended in nothingness, and it was eternal, where it was clear that I was facing myself in the when everything was stripped away of what I identified with, which then became as soon as I came back, and I don't want to go too far into it, but the the experience did lead me to realize that I was more than where I was, like in the experience with the boyfriend at the time, and denying my worth, which then set me on a I had to start figuring out how to get out of that relationship, and I didn't know afterward. I knew I had to, but I didn't know how. So another experience led me to being again close to death's door, which then reminded me, uh like the experience with the NDE reminded me of that I was more than the experience itself. And externally it seemed like everything was against me to move beyond, but as soon as I made the internal choice that I was worth more than that, somehow things started breaking down around me, which in some ways was extremely scary. And I think, like, as human beings, we are eagerly holding on to things that bring us a sense of safety, of comfort, even if it is not good for us. So the things that, like, I lost my job, lease was ending, everything felt like, oh my goodness, like, what's going on? Like, I don't know how to get another job. The circumstances technically wouldn't allow for it. But then things unfolded and things showed up that actually allowed me to get out of that situation and make a better experience for myself afterward. And then not longer after that, I met my now ex-husband, but the circumstances allowed for an unfolding where I could actually, after that relationship started, was good. So I was able to go inward and kind of retract out of the external world and focus on the little inner world of the family container, and becoming a mother. And that started unraveling more of what I had done before, and it created the opportunity to again look at how was I using my story, or the beliefs that I had been carrying for so long with my family of origin, and looking at the family patterns of my mother and my grandmother, because they weren't living nearby. I was able to see from a distance, but some experience unfolded that allowed me to, like, see that there is a lot of, like, stories playing out that had created a particular perception of myself, and in which I tied my worth. But because they came to visit once and then they left, it started. And then having kids of my own, like starting with my youngest, I really started unraveling that and seeing, I don't want to pass on these stories to my children, and trying to do things differently. But how do you do that, right? That I kind of that framework, we didn't really grow up with that, but I did carry already the understanding that the way I was raised, perhaps the stories created, or even the perceptions that unfolded from a very immature child's perspective, that I didn't want to carry that on to the next generation. So I started further unraveling with how these stories came about in my on my family side, on my mother's side particularly, the beliefs that I didn't want to pass on, like I had to be a certain way or look a certain way to be good enough. Like I didn't want to pass that on to my children. And my first was a boy, and I have 4 kids total, 2 of them girls, 2 of them boys. So it's an interesting way to navigate that. But especially just how do you change the way you raise your children from the way you were raised? So I started looking into conscious parenting, um, being working with my own emotions, and not letting my triggers become reactions towards the children that could perhaps create the same pattern that I grew up with. So I had to be very consciously aware of how I was showing up. And also being very graceful with myself when I screwed up, because that's part of the journey as well. So I did dive deeply into that, especially when the children were young, and trying to see uh, how I could not be reactive. But all of that did also lead me to the work that I do now. It's working with the subconscious mind, where a lot of these stories are stored, and that if we are not consciously aware of how we are showing up, that will drive the car, if you will. So yeah, that all of that led me to working with the subconscious mind, and even with the transpersonal aspects of the beyond, because of my experience with the NDE and knowing that there's more to that. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey, but ever since, yeah, I've become an advocate for kids, for the way we raise children, for self-examining the way we show up without being judgmental of that too, because it is something that happens, and being judgmental towards ourselves can be the biggest obstacle towards changing the way we show up in the world for our children and for ourselves. So yeah, it's been a lot of unfolding there. Yeah, it took me about 18 years to even come to a full understanding as to what that NDE created for me. I had to mature enough to be able to understand that. And then through the work that I've been doing, a lot of it is energy healing, and then the hypnotherapy and the transpersonal. I've done quite a bit of past life regression and age regression to really bring these parts to the forefront, and integrating that. And I think all of these experiences thus far have given me the opportunity to be able to help other people, especially women that deal with their deal not in a negative way, but have been struggling with self-worth, and trying to find a voice, particularly, which is another thing that I didn't know I had. I denied that for so long, that just to try to keep the peace, right? To try to be worthy enough for love, or being accepted, or belonging. That I see there are so many that really want to have the support and have the understanding of knowing that what they're going through is not imagined, right? We're all very often told, oh, you're just imagining things. Oh, it's not real. Oh, just suck it up. Things are good. You should be grateful. I mean, and I see that the practice of gratitude can go to different ways if it's misunderstood. Why you can be grateful of the good things that you're experiencing, but it shouldn't come at the cost of denying the things that are not good for you. So really working with those things, and giving people a space to be fully heard and understood, and come to the conclusion that some of the things that are occurring are not for their own, their own for health, and sometimes how it is actually manifesting into physical dis-ease and discomforts, especially chronic stuff. I even seen it for myself, grief that was unexpressed because I didn't feel safe to express it. It had been stored for ages in my hips, for example. And then I look back at the experiences that my mother and my grandmother had. They've had hip issues, low back issues, stored for so long. And I know even with my grandmother, she back in those days, I think as women particularly, there was no other option to like fully honor oneself, because there was like a very clear spoken expectation that the women had to submit or be submissive or be a housewife, and not being able to share their truth because maybe it would ruffle feathers. So just keep the peace, be quiet, do your job, do the dishes, take care of the kids, go grocery shopping, take care of the housework and everything. But meanwhile, they had feelings, right? We all have feelings that then became deeply repressed. And it doesn't just disappear, it gets stored into the physical body, and it manifests as chronic discomfort, and
Yep.
and just that goes on with the pattern as it's being passed down unconsciously, unintentionally. Also, I definitely see that they didn't know any better, that then can get passed on, the pattern itself plus the discomfort too, until it is fully felt, and that can be quite a bit of an unraveling there as well. So yeah, that's how I would, that's been my goal, to show up for everything that I have experienced, and the complete dishonor of myself that is, I think, I'm pretty sure, a very common experience among the women collectively, especially in the Western world, or at least it's maybe unspoken, but it is being spoken about more, so that I want to show up and support those women to be able to fully honor themselves, regardless of what society says, regardless of what culture says, regardless of what religion says, not to deny themselves just to be seen as good and in the eyes of another, or opinions of another, and to fully honor themselves. And regardless of what that looks like, maybe it means setting boundaries, maybe it means to honor their voice, maybe it means to take more time out of the house, to have self-care, but to fully feel that they're worthy of doing that, and then working with the guilt if that comes up, because oftentimes selfish is a story underneath that will, pull on those strings of guilt, and you shouldn't know, you need to be home. I've dealt with that too, when I was trying to get out, and leaving the kids with my husband, then oh, I should be home, what if they're crying, oh, maybe this or that, or I am selfish for walking out the door without the kid, oh, I should be available for them 24/7. And I've done a lot of that, where I was to the point of burnout. But
Yeah.
now it's been pretty clear that you can do that too, if you got to fill your cup first, and then how you do that is to dismantle all the stories inside the subconscious mind, and the beliefs carried for so long that keep you tethered to the overgiving, the pleasing, and denying yourself. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I also see the many people that I have coming to see me are definitely in this space where they want to, like, there is often that internal voice already that says, well, this is not it, this, something's wrong, something's off, like something's unright, or constantly dealing with tiredness and fatigue, or even certain habits that are used to cope with the difficulty to be able to keep going. I mean, it's just, even I've done that with like caffeine, to be able to, okay, start my morning coffee, and I have one in the afternoon, and I've even gotten to the point, it's at once that I had 3 cups of coffee just to be able to deal with it. And then I even see in other experiences where it is not a cup of coffee, it becomes a glass of wine. just to decompress. And yeah, I think at large, not even for women, but for men too. I mean, they've got many of men that were grown up to uh, deal with the circumstances and fix it all and deny their feelings and don't, the old story where emotions are weak and you have to uh, be strong and be a leader, and you can't be weak if you want to be a leader, or the whole idea where boys are raised or have been raised just to stuff away their emotions, which, I mean, where does that go? uh, and then we have a whole culture that that normalizes drinking after work, or just to decompress, because of the stories that, okay, I have to show up, I have to do constantly, do, provide, make money, survive. I think it's all about survival. And I've had a couple of men too in my practice that are lost, that they're the midlife crisis, where they've got it all, that society or just the old story said, okay, this is what makes you successful, this is likely the label that finally says, well, now you're worthy, but something's missing. And they're trying to figure out, like, well, who am I now that I am this this ideal version of the American dream, for example, and they have a picket fence, they've got kids, they bought their house. There's a lot of dissonance going on because it's a story that's once created, and it's probably coming from the times of poverty where, well, you have to make sure that there's food on the table, there's a roof above the head. Emotions weren't really an option to be felt at the time, because when you're in survival mode, that's just put to the side, and on it goes until something snaps within, and it's time to go within and figure out, like, what is this? Who am I? And getting to the story of existence itself,
Mhm.
figuring that out.
That's great. So you've become the person that you needed.
Right.
Yes, there's a lot of reparenting that happened throughout the process of all of this. Yeah, just definitely seeing all these parts of myself that I denied just to fit in, to belong, and to feel worthy, and uh, giving that part of me finally a chance to be uh, honored and seen and validated, right? Um, which now is, um, yeah, I definitely see how that work has absolutely helped me integrate these parts that once I didn't even accept that myself. Even the parts that did the craziest things just to feel good enough. Like, I mean, I've had my experiences in my early 20s uh, with alcohol as well, and partying and trying to cope with not not knowing who I was, and but still something was off. But yes, it's been a beautiful journey to be able to bring these parts and reparent, and definitely being the person that I needed to be or needed to have at the time. Um, and I think, yeah, there's so many that need to have that person, and then I would be honored to be able to help them see that they have been going through these experiences and also needed somebody that they didn't have available at the time, because whatever their parents weren't able to, they were also in survival, maybe working both, or just not knowing how to handle emotions, or just being human, until they find their own inner power or sovereignty to be able to move forward. I don't want to be always the person. I don't want to be the one that everybody relies on constantly, but I want to help them find that inner part of themselves that can then take over. So kind of like, working on slowly but surely moving that wall down, and then finding that there's so much more inner resources available that then can help. And
Wouldn't it be wonderful if as young people, as children, we learned these steps at a young age? So as we grew, we had the skill set to live a true life. You know what I mean? So that we don't always put ourselves last. You know, the more we do these podcasts, the more that I feel like every situation has in common. We don't take care of ourselves. We don't, as young kids, maybe we are trying to please our parents or our teacher or our this or our that, and we don't get to be true to who we really are. And I think that's something that we lack in teaching our young people. I think that's something we should work on, to help everybody. And it must be so rewarding to know that first that you've made that great journey, but that you're helping others to do the same. That's a wonderful thing.
it sure does. And yeah, with the children and everything, there are a lot more movements these days that are honoring the youth, to be able to honor themselves. Some of it are programs that are a little bit different than what you would find like certain public schooling where they already have the standard programming. Nothing against that. For so many, that is absolutely what's necessary. And then there are teachers that are also more aware of emotional landscapes, and don't just uh, scrutinize behavior, because everything, behavior is a language too. It's just the only one that a young child may have available at them to be able to explain in perhaps less than joyful ways that something is wrong. But really, like looking at when we look at behavior, like you have child psychology and neuroscience and attachment theory that go a lot deeper into how you listen to a baby's cues from and educating new parents about it, instead of putting the baby to sleep because it's crying hour, because that's something that I heard from my grandmother and my mother at the time when my youngest was crying, and he was only 2 weeks old. And I was told that was when my grandmother came visiting with my youngest. She made some traditional dinner, and was in the kitchen for hours to prepare that. And when it was ready and served on the table, my baby was crying, and I was feeling drawn to go and soothe the child, whereas my grandmother was like, "No, let him cry, let him cry." Come sit at the dinner table because I've spent so many hours making dinner. So you should be sitting at the table and don't go and meet your child. So then there's already that dissonance. Like you want to
You're torn.
honor your elder, right? She's out of respect, but then at the same time there is a baby that needs you. And then that's the old ways, or the more common ways, is to let the child cry, leave them by themselves and let them cry. But I couldn't do that. And I see now in hindsight too, after I dove deeper into what that means, it's also behavior. It's not that the child needs to cry, or it's just random crying hour. It's a child that needs soothing, that had spent the last 9 months in the womb, and for the last 2 weeks it's in a space cold, uncomfortable. You pick up the baby and you hold it, and not everybody knows that or understands that, or even if that's not how they raise their children, and they may think, "Oh my goodness, I didn't pick up my baby." That's okay too. You didn't know any better. We don't want to judge ourselves for the choices we made. But at the time, I could clearly see that there was an option to choose. And one of them, if I had constantly listened to the advice of my well-meaning grandmother, then there would have been an attachment need unmet for my child, which then affects the way they develop, and their sense of self, or in the world at large. It can go that early when they feel unsafe, because the constant crying and the soothing and the falling asleep at a young age, when they are let them cry it out and let them soothe themselves. It's out of survival they stop crying. It's not that they've soothed themselves. So it's that nervous system is already getting primed at that point to feel unsafe. And that's not, none of that is done out of malice, but out of misunderstanding and an awareness of how this creates attachment issues from a child. And then further, you have a parent that might reprimand the child for crying, like you say, you have a boy, oh, you there's nothing to cry about, I'll give you something to cry about. Or a girl that is expressing anger because something's wrong and she gets reprimanded for being angry or having to go to her room and figure it out, or whatever, that those things. There's so much more awareness about it now, and that's something that I also want to spread through some of my attuned parenting, that just to share that awareness and teach parents that it's okay to listen to that intuitive side, because moms, they have that. Many moms, there's that internal feeling like, I want to soothe my child, but then the parenting book and the pediatrician and all of them, I mean, of course we need to listen to the pediatrician too, but there's a lot of advice out there that goes against that. It's almost like behaviorism, like
Right.
which I think, if we can really shift that, plus then working on our own reactiveness and the emotions that we stored that get triggered through the child experience, then we have an opportunity to shift that one step at a time. Just the way how we raise our youth, and then create more internally attached through the experience of having had an attachment figure properly. So.
Wow, that's wonderful. And when somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So for my business, I do the hypnotherapy, transpersonal hypnotherapy, and some of it is past life regression related. You can find that on liberate2empower.com.
Great name.
That is.
Okay. And Jewel, do you have any final questions?
Well, if you said so many great things and your journey is a wonderful one, but if there was something that you'd want the audience to take away today, one thing that you could tell the audience, what would it be?
I would say that to hone into that internal hum, that intuitive side that may tell them something's wrong, or some things doesn't seem to, some doesn't seem right. Not the kind that is intensely fear, like the when it's anxiousness, but there's this inner dissonance around something that somebody says they might need to do, or something that they feel they may need to do, but somewhere inside it doesn't feel like the right choice. I would say listen to that, like pay attention to that part, because that's an inner guidance that and I know that's the part that we are often taught, especially younger age, that's don't listen to that, it's all imaginary. But it's actually an inner wisdom, an inner compass that has the best information available for you, because it is tied to your own inner wisdom. And I would listen to that, and especially when it comes to your self-worth. You are worthy. You are worthy regardless of what other people say. And I know that it is hard to sometimes trust that, because we create our identities and stories around what other people, our parents, may have said once. But we are so much more than the product of our environment. And I think stepping out of that and truly listening to that inner part of ourselves can actually help to grow that self-worth more, so when we stop listening to that external stuff other people and start listening to that inner discernment. I think that will actually, one step at a time, help to grow your own self-worth and follow that.
Beautiful.
Yes.
That's great advice. It is.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much for being our guest today. And thank the audience for joining us once again for A Better World with Julann and Fran. Please like and share this video, and please join us again next week, won't you? So long for now.
Thank you.
Bye.